All right, everyone, welcome back to Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, otherwise known as ASA. I'm your host, David Savva-Willett, and it is my pleasure to be bringing you the diverse voices of the Australian cyber community, which I'm doing today from beautiful Brisbane in sunny Queensland at 2026's BrisSEC. So at the time of listening to this, you've probably heard a few of the interviews that I've done. I've had the pleasure of getting to meet a number of our speakers at the event today. And sitting across from me at the moment is Darren Hopkins. Darren is a partner at McGrathNicol, a Brisbane-based cybersecurity professional with more than 30 years of experience across law enforcement and the private sector. His career began in law enforcement, providing a strong investigative foundation that continues to shape his approach to cyber incident response and digital forensics. Darren, welcome to Cyber Voices.
Thanks, David. It's a great introduction CV, I must admit.
So, how are you finding the day?
Excellent now. I've had a presentation.
You've literally just done it, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. It was just from a presentation to CU, so the nerves are in a much better state. We're terribly busy at the moment actually responding to incidents, so there's nothing better than having your head full of client work while you're trying to focus on these things. So I'm looking forward to the afternoon, actually.
Yeah, well, hopefully, something like BrisSEC can give you a little bit of a day out of all of that, a chance to kind of reconnect with the community and just kind of see what's going on and get the vibe, right?
Look, Brisbane's a small town, so we tend to know most of our peers in the community. So this is one of the few times you can actually come together and it's appropriate and safe to actually reconnect.
Yeah, and I think I kind of saw that as I met you outside and we walked across the floor and about 5 people tried to accost you and say hello and congratulate you on your speech. So that's a nice thing to kind of have so many connections and be able to just rock up anywhere and see so many familiar faces.
So I guess one of the benefits of been doing it for as long as I have, I think it's over 30 years. I think I stopped counting at 30 years. It's just 30 plus now, but you get to know and meet a lot of people. And there's a lot of leaders in Brisbane too, national lead roles for large organisations. So it's a great community here.
Absolutely. And it's my first BrisSEC, but not my first time to Brisbane. But I'm loving the community that we've got out there. And it's a very community energy, community feel. Everyone seems to be genuinely happy to be taking this day to come together. I want to talk to you today about your speech. Now, Darren and I started talking about the title of his talk, and we almost started nerding out about the topic before I even hit record. I'm like, hang on, hold on, we need to actually talk about this as a podcast. But the name of your talk was When You're Already Losing, Responding to a Cyber Crisis You Don't Control. Tell me a bit about that title.
One of the difficult things leading up to these conferences, if you go to put a submission in to speak, what's interesting and what do people want to hear about? And it has to come from your day job. I mean, you need to speak with some authority around what you do every day. And as I opened my session today with how did I come up with the title? And it was literally, I had just finished doing another set of playbooks, another incident response plan. I was focused on 2 tabletop exercises where we're going to simulate how you respond with those plans. And I felt really good about all those things. And I'd actually just done a really difficult decision matrix around a negotiation with a ransomware threat actor. I think this is great. And I realized that my main job is incident response. So I'm at the tail end of this when you're responding. And I realized that in probably the last 5 years, it would be less than 5 times I've been asked to look at someone's plan.
Mm-hmm.
I just respond as part of a team, and I call it agile incident response, where we make it up as we go. And it was the realization that often you can't plan for what actually happens. You have to be able to just move in a way that, gets you through the actual crisis. And the reason for that often is that you've got no control. You've got others who have got control, or there's third parties, or you don't own the system, or you can't get access to data, or there's a regulator or someone forcing you to do something. And that's actually really hard to manage, as opposed to what we plan for, which is this lovely framework of you'll do this first, and then you'll go from containment to eradication to response and recovery. And then at the very end, you get some lessons learned, and it just looks great on paper. You can do a great diagram, but that's just not the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the examples you threw out there, and we might get into it a bit later, but I was telling you an example before we hit record about where I didn't have control of an incident, where it was the technology or the environment I didn't have control of. But, you've mentioned there's a number of different things. Law enforcement could come in and they could wind up taking control, or the threat actor themselves is the one that could be in control because you've lost control of that, or you have no visibility over the environment you have in general. So where you said to me as well, coming into the podcast, that it seems like most cyber incidents kind of fall into this category, and it seems like something maybe we don't talk about enough. The fact that in the moment, you actually need to think more on your feet than, following some predestined plan, a bouncing ball approach, for example.
And I'm not denying we need plans. I mean, plans are terribly important because the things that plans do really well is make sure people know what their roles and responsibilities are, put up guardrails around what you can't do as well as what you should do, and give you a process where you don't forget things, almost like a checklist. Can't forget this. So those things are terribly important. But when I had a look at, what were those particular incidents, or when were those times that I actually, knew what I was doing, and I had a role, and we're an external incident response firm that does all types of cyber GRC as well. So we're not in the moment with the client all the time. It was generally just my clients that we got retainers with, and it's only because we forced it. I mean, when we onboard with somebody, part of our onboarding is I need to know what your plans are. I need to know how you want me to respond. I need to know what my job is and what I'm allowed to do. And that's actually risk management for me. So it wasn't really I'm doing the right thing to help my client do these things. I'm thinking, no, I don't want to make a mistake here. So I'm going to ask them those questions. The reality is that generally by the time you're at that point where you're in that moment of crisis, you don't have time to share plans and take a breath and run someone through what you'd like them to do. You just hope it works on the day. And ultimately, what dictates a great response is things like leadership.
Yeah.
Having decisions that are made with authority.
And look, I agree with you. Yeah, your plans and testing of those plans have their place. I find running executives or boards through a test or a simulation of the plan gives them an appreciation of the level of uncertainty that they will actually deal with in the event of an incident, and also helps get the support I need to get things done more than anything else.
I love simulations, especially when they're done right, because in our world, in the technical world, we are focused on what we need to do and we understand that role. But a real crisis, a real incident involves your communications teams, your legal team, your executive, people and culture. You've got all these other broader teams that technology is not their day job. So we want to simulate so that they know how they fit into that puzzle and that they can work with us and do the parts that they need to do. And that's a bit different from their day jobs. The other thing I like, you can do in a great simulation is you can test the chaos. I mean, we should test the plan and make sure that we go through all those decision gates and do the things that we want to make sure. And at the end of that, you say, well, was my plan up to scratch? How do I change it to be more suitable for what actually happened in real life? But the most fun simulations I've done is where we start with, forget about the plan. Let's just go down and just make it really interesting and really difficult and still real, but in a way that we haven't considered these issues. So you start with an issue where everything's happening with a third party that doesn't want to talk to you, but you need them badly because they are maybe your payroll provider or they're your finance system. And then you throw something in there that just makes it hard. They're not going to talk to you. They've lawyered up. That's when you start to test how you can really respond and are you ready to deal with that?
Yeah. And from my perspective, there's something oddly satisfying about that moment where you can see it clicking in maybe an exec's or a board member's brain that, oh, wait, this could happen. I could be faced with this decision, this information. We do hold this information, and that would look bad if that got into the wrong hands. I want to ask the question though. So, you've just given a talk with responding to a cyber crisis you don't control. How do you respond to a cyber crisis you don't control?
Yeah, ultimately, when you don't have control, there are things that you need to just be aware of. And the first thing is that you have to make decisions no matter what. So on the way through, you need to be able to make decisions and move things through. You've got to respond. The acceptance that you'll be doing that with very limited information sometimes, or in some cases, almost no information. So how do you actually make a decision, an authoritative decision, and back yourself in a way that doesn't cause you any future problems? And what are the other things you should be aware of as you go through? One of the things I talked about was there'll be demands for assurance. If you've got an incident and you've impacted others or you've got clients that rely on you, a range of them will be asking some things from you. They'll want assurance that it's okay. Have you contained it? All these things. It was just really understanding, well, you've got to do some of these things, but be very careful in how you do those things. Don't set yourself up to fail later on. And also the things that in the moment are easy to forget. You still got to make sure that you keep a register of facts and things that you know and you don't know or you suspect. You need to document these things. Keep a track of the evidence you've collected and where it is and who does it. Try to do that in a single source, not 5 different sources that maybe have some conflict in relation to what they've said. I still find communications is critically important in a crisis. It's the thing that if you get it wrong, it's really wrong. So what are the things that you can say and you want people to say and be on the same page when you don't necessarily have control of what you're doing? So when it is a third party that you don't control, what are you going to say and who says that and how, as opposed to the traditional holding statements that talk about your issue? So a lot of it was running through what we've seen in the presentation and then how you might respond and those little tricks that we've sort of come up with over the years that make things. And the one thing that I found that I encourage everyone to do in their planning is to think about cadence of updates. I say that because the one thing I'm asked for literally every job is an update, sometimes hourly, worst case daily. They say, I need you to tell me more. What's happening? Where's the update? And we would get stuck where if you don't get that right, multiple people are asking for the updates. And you end up spending your whole day just talking to people about where they're at, but not really moving forward with an answer to, well, what's actually happened. So setting cadence, it's a great trick. It might be twice a day, maybe once a day, but set the expectation and cadence around an update. You'll buy yourself all the time leading up to that update. And there's a little trick we sort of found and wanted to share that. Because when someone knows that there's an update in 2 hours, they probably won't ring you and say, I need an update.
Yeah. And I assume by that you're talking about, whether that be third parties or people you collaborate with, or also like media and stuff like that as well.
and it's going to be relevant for most parts of the organization that have a role in responding. Everyone needs to provide, they're all doing something. So how do you sort of get that information from all the different groups that are responsible? So technical teams clearly have this burden of owning some of this life cycle. So they're responsible for the root cause assessment. What's happened? Have we contained it? What's the remediation or the rebuild look like? What's the timing around all these things? Because these things impact the business. So they have those things. But then your media and communications team, has there been any reach outs? What are we saying to the media? What are we saying internally to our staff? And what's our general sort of hold position on these things? Very important that you understand if something's been said as well. So there's consistency in messaging. And you do want all of these groups to come together. People and culture and HR. What's the pulse of the team? Are they okay? Can I work them for another 12 hours? Is it safe to do those things? So
do we need to go and get everyone some Uber Eats or something like that?
That should be in every playbook.
Yeah.
Either a Domino's number for pizza or Uber Eats around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you're really sort of projecting this message to organizations as a whole. Probably have a lot of cyber leaders and professionals who listen to this show and out there on the floor listening to you. But this is the sort of thing you actually need to play back to your people and culture team and your media and comms team. And that's the sort of thing that dawns on them when they do a simulation, for example, as well. It's like, oh, wow, I'm really quite heavily involved in a cybersecurity incident, a cybersecurity crisis.
Yeah, and you do need those teams to work together. And interestingly enough, if they're not all on the same page and they're not sort of running together, someone will do something that upsets everyone else. And it can be something as simple as someone doing what they think is the right thing and providing an update to all the internal teams so they're not worried. And this is what we know. And an overshare like that at the wrong time can be absolutely devastating to a contained message you're trying to project. And I appreciate, David, you own the risk in a lot of these issues as a CISO. I mean, that's your job, and you're building a resilience network around your business. You're managing that. You own the risk. I'm assuming in the simulations, you've got a CEO coming to you actually wanting all the answers. There's a board sitting there talking to the executive as well.
Yeah. And also in real incidents that I've been into, right? Like it's like, all right, this is happening. And then everyone turns to you and just goes, all right, David, what next?
Yep.
I've actually been in simulations where I've had the facilitator go, all right, they do tend to sort of lean on me a little bit too much and not like go into their own responsibilities. Can we make a rule at the start of the simulation? They can ask me questions for 5 to 10 minutes max, and then David's got a job to do or the CISO's got a job to do, need to let them get back to the problem and then let them talk about
that's
their decisions as executives, board members, whatever it may be.
absolute reality. Your day job will be as busy as it's ever been during that particular time. And one of the benefits of the simulations, and you go down that path as well, is never waste a good crisis. And I find simulations are a reminder of what the real crisis can be. And if you're looking as a security professional, sometimes we all talk about, well, how do we get support to do the things we need to do? How do we get the budget? How do we get the buy-in? And I mean, best way is to make people feel uncomfortable on a real life example of what could happen in a safe manner. But when they realize that, well, I felt uncomfortable when it's safe, how will I feel when it's not?
Yeah, exactly. So Darren, you help a lot of organizations with incident response. What is the most common mistake? I don't know if mistake's the right word, but what do you commonly see when you first enter the room when you've been called upon to help? What is usually happening?
Other than someone trying to transfer all their risk to me, which is an interesting one.
Yeah, it sounds like similar to what I was saying before, but yeah.
We collect stats, of course, in relation to all our incidents, and we try to get some insights from them. The scary thing is, it's scary in a way in that we're probably not doing enough, but at the same time, I feel quite happy that one of our stats is that 99% of the incidents we've done, and I'm talking hundreds upon hundreds of incidents that we've done over the years, were all absolutely preventable. So, I mean, we could have prevented the incident. And a lot of the issues we still see presented are things that we all know. It's simple hygiene, or it's decisions around investments that we have put off. It's doing the hard things that we don't want to do. I'm not interested in application control just yet because it's really hard to do and we'll do it half-assed. Those things prevent incidents. The only reason we have such a budding incident response community is because a lot of organizations are just not doing the things that they know they should do. So there's never any rocket science behind observations and recommendations. And quite often it's like, I'll have a CISO say, well, I might have been asking that for a while, or maybe I've suggested this for a while. There's two things we can't stop, though. I mean, there'll always be these things coming up. We can't stop a 0 day. And we're seeing far, far more of them. And, the keynote today at the conference was excellent. We're talking about AI and where it goes. And of course, Mythos came up as one of those things. And you sort of think, okay, well, it's there to find 0 days so that they can be stopped. I mean, that's where we've got it at the moment. But ultimately, we'll start to find more 0 days in technology we rely upon. So that's something we can't stop. And we can't stop people making mistakes. And a lot of the controls we put in around risk management of this issue rely on good technology being configured correctly with people watching it and all those great things. And that works really well. But when someone makes a mistake, or unfortunately when you get the other side of this where there's a malicious insider, you can't stop those things. And whilst you might be able to put some processes around detecting them quickly, it may not stop them. But good news is, as I said, 99% of the real life things that we see on a day-to-day basis were absolutely easily stopped. My last 15 incidents in the last month and a half, every single one of them was preventable with something very simple. Just some support, some budget, and someone to implement something, and that was it.
Yeah, there's a lot of CISOs or heads of cyber or whatever out there who have probably lived through an incident and gone, inside voice has probably said, I told you so.
It's, at some point you've got someone's accepting the risk.
Of course.
And that's actually okay. And it's something, and that's why we have risk registers and we go off and we measure it and then we accept it. And sometimes that was,
Yeah. And, and I attend a lot of like closed door sessions with people who've lived through it where they talk about what they experienced and what control could have helped. And like you're saying, like a lot of things are preventable. The amount of times I've heard someone go, yeah, this was on our plan, but we hadn't quite got there yet, or we had to defund this to prioritize something else or something along those lines. And whether it's, something as simple as application control, or even some organizations still haven't really got MFA nailed down properly, right? Like there's a common story of like, yep, we wanted to do that, or it was on the plan, or we were halfway through it.
And I think that's okay. And you're right. Look, some of this is basic hygiene things, and there's probably no excuse for some of those things that maybe don't have a material cost, and you can implement them. And maybe you've said no because it's a bit disruptive and people don't like it. I mean, that's a hard one to come back from. But certainly, if you have a plan and you're working to a plan, there isn't unlimited budgets. As a CISO, you've got to work with what you've got, and you are adding value to your organization as well. So how do you do those things? And if it's just unfortunate that something happened before you got to it, I mean, that's the reality of running a business, I guess.
Yeah. And there's so much unusual pressure around all of that because you'll do internal audit and all that kind of stuff, and all of it will come back and say, "Yep, here's all this stuff you're not doing." And then there's the nuanced conversation around, yes, this is what we're not doing, but this is what we are doing. We acknowledge that's a risk, but there are constraints around why we can't do some of this stuff.
Which is exactly why in our world, criticality is so important. Which is the most important things? What do we first do? And can we get some bang for buck here? What can we do quickly and actionable that has a meaningful outcome? It's what we do. Yeah.
In terms of organizations that you've worked with, you obviously see this day in, day out. What's gotten better in the way that we're responding to incidents, if anything at all?
One thing that's definitely gotten better is most organizations understand that this is likely a risk that will happen at some point. So there's less of their head in the sand, it won't happen to us. Very, very small businesses sometimes think, well, no one will be interested in us, we're too small, and therefore we probably don't need to action that. And that's a mindset that I see at a smaller end of town. But for most, mid and larger organizations, there's an acceptance that they have to plan for these things, and they're actually putting genuine investment in, and they know that they have to do something. So that's great. I definitely see boards being far more mature about the risk. And that's something in the last 2 or 3 years. And it's probably due to our regulators, being as vocal as they are around the expectations they have on.
Yeah, well, ownership, so much ownership has been put back onto them, right?
Yeah. And they're asking good questions, and they are engaging with executives and wanting to understand what we're doing. And that's great because IT people, and I'm going to say I'm in this world, we had this horrible stigma that years ago when IT turned up or security turned up to the board, we were the girls asking for money.
Mm.
We always came, we need to buy something. We need to onboard something. I need new technology. So we were seen to just keep asking, and we would then go off and demonstrate why we need it by showing how risky it was to not do this. And it was a little bit of that fear factor would come through, as opposed to just having a very open conversation around risks and benefits and return on investments and all the normal language that the executives and directors would expect you to talk to. And I think as a community, we're getting much better. I see CISOs now who are very, very well versed in managing the risk that they actually hold and can articulate that very well to a board and to directors and can get proper engagement. That's something that's gotten much better in the last few years.
Yeah, we've certainly become better storytellers, I think.
So much.
It's something we talk about a lot on this podcast. We've had a couple of first-time CISOs in lately who've all gone, wow, I really learned how to tell a better story. Because that's what it's all about, right? Like when it comes to what I was saying before about, being able to openly communicate what you are and are not doing and why you're putting certain things on the backlog or just managing those, like for people to understand that, but then also to be able to understand why you need that additional investment, why there's now this new tool that you need. But I also feel that like that's also part of the pressure of security leaders too, is it does feel like we're always just asking for more. Like,
what other industry evolves as quick as ours does though?
Yeah, exactly.
What we did 2 or 3 years ago quite often is outdated because the technology that we're innovating with is gone far beyond that. And Microsoft's a classic example of how quickly Microsoft changes their ecosystems and changes the things that they're selling to us and we're using. And if we don't consistently evolve how we secure and defend those systems, we'll always fall behind.
Yeah, but there's always some tool that's coming along that's solving a problem you didn't know you had.
Yeah, and look, at the moment, if someone hasn't put the AI sort of mantra to whatever tool they're selling, well, maybe it's too old and we do need to improve. And I mean, a lot of us, I don't know, me especially, I love a good gadget.
Mm-hmm.
And I get drawn into the new
shiny
shinies.
new toy. Yeah. Yeah. Let me give me a good POV tenant and let me play around for a little bit. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I want to let you get out there and enjoy the rest of the day. What parting of advice have you got for cyber leaders, or in fact anyone who may be listening to this now who is likely going to have to be involved in a cyber crisis, especially in the theme of your talk? What's the wisdom that you like to leave people with in terms of what they could start doing differently today?
It's a great question. Don't stop doing the things that you know are important. And I'm talking about building good plans and playbooks and running simulations and testing those things, because that's how you build muscle memory. And that's how in the moment you don't feel that you're not prepared. So you want to keep doing those things. But certainly what I'd encourage everyone to think about is start to plan for the things that are just really hard, where all of your control or all of your systems are probably not going to be available, and actually stress yourselves into that world. And we should all appreciate that we are actively looking to move things to third parties. That's what most of our plans look to do. We've been doing it for years. First it was cloud, and now it's heavily SaaS focused. What that means is that there's this massive ecosystem of third parties that are not you don't have control over, and you just got to hope that they'll work with you. And if at the very least you start to think about the contracts you have with those third parties, and do those contracts allow me to do things that I would need to do in my incident that they've caused, and get some of those things right, then that's a great start.
Good advice. Well, thank you so much for bringing your talk to BrisSEC, and thank you so much for sharing your voice with us today.
Thanks. Enjoyed it.